911, what's your emergency? Excuse me, is this the German Baroque?
I like how you said you wanted to try a different phrasing, but you actually meant you wanted to try a different intonation.
Well, it's so I did it. I'm sorry, and then I did excuse me. So that is a different phrasing.
Okay,
Checkmate,
never mind.
Feminists.
I was wrong. You were right. Welcome back to the First Spodcast, everybody. Today we're jumping into finally kind of a normal episode instead of the I guess we had the Halloween episode in between the two Copaganda episodes, but
didn't that feel weird? You know,
it's been a lot of like complaining lately.
Yeah, we've been whining a lot, so I'm excited to talk about a good episode of the show. I dare I say a great episode of the show.
I admit I still have some grievances in this one. I'm sorry. It's like pretty good. I enjoyed a lot of it.
We'll address them when they come up, I suppose.
Yeah.
We are. I will say we are in a good mood today. Things are looking. Finally, there's a bright spark in the world. As a New Yorker, I am very, very, very happy right now because, say it with me, y'all. Zoran Mamdani.
At last, a decent person being, well, not even elected to office yet, but hey, fingers crossed, knock on wood, a big obstacle is passed.
I set my my lock screen. I had my lock screen as Luigi for a while, but I've updated it to Zoran. I love this man so much, and I just love looking at his smiley face.
Your two New York heroes.
My two New York heroes. Okay, we're also celebrating because Jane may be finding her own place soon.
Jane might be finally moving out of her parents' house soon. It doesn't happen for a while, and then it happens very fast. So, You know what I'm most excited about, actually, is, like, sort of designing a YouTube studio from scratch, Because I've always just done it. For anyone who doesn't know, I record all my YouTube videos in my childhood bedroom. Hello.
Yes.
Which is, like, fine, but it's kind of a cluttered space because it's, like, everything I've ever owned. So I just do it in front of that bookshelf. It's very cramped. I get hot. I'm sitting on this desk chair with, like, a broken leg, so I have to be, like, teetering on it precariously, making sure I don't tip over. So that's why filming is, like, actually my least favorite part of the YouTube process. I would love to get a setup that I can actually do from scratch and, like, get some deliberate scenery and blocking and staging in there, like, make a really comfortable arrangement, because I've been missing that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I wish I had room to do a YouTube setup, but unfortunately I also film in my bedroom, and my bedroom is quite small.
I mean, it'll definitely still be in my bedroom, and I don't really know how small my bedroom will be yet, but hopefully at least, it'll be a fresh start to do something.
Exactly. Other housekeeping news. Pride is almost over, so it's going to be illegal to be gay soon. So get all your gay out.
Yeah, by the time we post this episode, it'll probably be over. That's so sad.
Well, pack it up, queers. I've been
podcast
celebrating.
Is straight now.
What could a gay person do this? No.
My body is changing. I feel the straightness coursing through my veins.
Every year or so, I get into, like, a new, like, older musician, and I just have, like, a prolonged phase of just, like, listening to their music, like pretty much nonstop. So last year it was John Lennon. And I also had, like, a brief, like, Elvis phase, but, like, specifically weirdly, like, later Elvis, like live from Elvis Presley Boulevard Elvis, the one that everyone makes fun of, but I think is some of his best work. And now I am getting really into Prince, and I'm having a major Prince phase. And so I've literally just been, like, on my commute, or just, like, whatever. Like, I was going uptown to return something to Amazon, and I got, like, sent to, like, Staples, and then the UPS store, and then Staples again in, like, 100-degree weather. And I was just, the entire time I was just listening to, like, Purple Rain and, like, Sign of the Times and everything. And I was, like, having, like, you know what? On any other day, this would have sucked, but not today. Today, I feel free.
Well, hey, that's my Minnesotan hero. You got your
Hello.
New York heroes, and I got that one.
Him and the Vikings, right?
Him and the Vikings.
Who else is from Minnesota? I guess Bobby
The
Nash.
Coen
but...
brothers. Bobby
Oh,
Nash, that's right.
Well, Bobby Nash, he doesn't count anymore, does he?
Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is from Minnesota as well.
Bob Dylan, yes.
And hey, me.
Hello. If it was the Mount Rushmore of Minnesota is Prince, the Coen brothers, Bob Dylan, and Jane Mulcahy.
I'm always saying that.
I love the image of that. I love the idea of that. The Cynthia Erivo gift, the idea of that.
The concept of that. Yes, well, today we are covering Season 3, Episode 8, Malfunction, directed by Joaquin Cedillo, who also did Triggers earlier this season and also a few in Season 5 and 6. As we've mentioned before, he is a common director of photography for the show who directs occasionally. This one was written by Tanya Kong. This is her second and last episode of the show. She also wrote Triggers, which... I think in like one of our last episodes, we couldn't remember what we thought about Triggers, but I have since remembered we liked it. It was like the drama queen episode.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so we stand her. What's it? Valerie is her name?
Tanya. What the fuck?
Tanya? Oh.
Her name is Tanya Kong. I don't know where
Right.
you got Valerie.
Well, Tanya, good job. You're 2-0, and it's gonna remain O. It seems like, so that's good. We'll go out on a high note. This episode, I will say, has a very interesting sort of thematic through line. It's got like two core themes running through it, which is that converge at the end of the episode, which is grief and the dangers of automation.
Well, and arguably malfunctioning.
Well, that's what I mean. The automation thing, like when machines strike back. Ooh, Skynet.
Yeah,
whatever.
For sure. I mean, we're lucky, I would say, because in this episode, we actually don't get a constant stream of characters saying, like, well, looks like that was a malfunction. You know,
Yeah,
like I don't think
subtle.
we actually got a title drop in this one.
Yeah, we didn't. It's more subtle. It's like it's not like you have to say the title of the episode. It's just like, oh, things malfunction, and also people go through grief. And we get a lot of really good acting out of this episode as well. So
It's
I'm
like
very
grief
happy
is
about
almost
that.
like the human malfunction. Not really.
Ooh.
That makes it sound
Ooh.
like it's like a problem that needs curing to grieve.
The concept of grieving being the human malfunction. Ooh.
Yeah, don't quote me on that. Anyhow, we open with a stunning ice show going on. We've got like an ice dancing show.
Legendary call. It needs be said in 911 lore, because a father is here.
You have been saying it needs be said so much lately.
I know. I'm trying not to. It's like I was watching like a YouTuber.
No, I think it's fine. It's funny how I like watch these things like evolve and devolve in us.
I was watching this YouTuber and I realized, wow, she really says indeed every other sentence, huh? And like I don't want to be that. I don't want to turn into that.
That's like me with the words interestingly, rather.
We go to.
Yeah,
we transition every scene with we go from that to this.
I mean, it's the easiest way to do it. Yeah,
it is. It's very straightforward and it communicates it effectively. But okay, so it doesn't need be said. It is said with a great deal of authority that this show. I even forget like what I was like leading into with it needs to be said.
Yeah,
okay, so there's a dad here. He's got bored kids.
Yeah, his kids are bored, which I thought was kind of crazy. It's one thing to take your kids to like an opera or something and they don't really care, but I thought like this stunning like fairy tale themed ice dancing seems like it would be pretty exciting for kids. But these kids don't care. They're on their phone. Backstage, it is not boring because backstage, like an ice dancing couple that are about to go on are arguing very... like
they are fighting. They're arguing like viciously. You know, there's like, so they are like obviously some sort of like some couple that is like like at the tail end of their relationship, there's this big blow up fight. This fuck ass dweeb named Randy, dressed as Elphaba Throp over here.
I loved him. He was bringing a great energy to the scene.
He's going full like unhinged Margaret Hamilton. I was really living for his energy.
Yeah, he looks. That's a good correction. He doesn't look like Idina Menzel Elphaba. He looks like Margaret Hamilton Elphaba. And he's like just sort of listening in on this conversation. On stage, we see some people are already out there ice dancing, and we see a sequin fall from a costume conspicuously.
Oh, this is so Final Destination coded. It's insane.
Oh, it is. It totally is. This is a good example of 911's like Final Destination style calls, because the fighting couple, they get on stage. They are true professionals because they go in an instant from fighting to like big smiles and cheating out and whatever. They start dancing, skating, whatever you want to call it. Suddenly a skater slips and falls on that sequin. Somebody immediately accidentally skates over their fingers, severing them. It's a great moment. It's such a like horror movie. Again, it's a very Final Destination moment.
Yeah.
The girl from the ice dancing couple falls, and her, like in the commotion, and her skate stabs into her ice dancing partner, the guy she's been arguing with. 911 call.
911 call, title card. It is such a punchy opener, and also a very high production value opener. Like this scene just like looked expensive. This entire episode looked expensive, and I was
they had to like hire a bunch of ice dancers.
Yeah, they had to find a location. They had to build the sets and the costumes. They had to choreograph it. The effects looked really good in this episode. Like this episode in general, just like the production values were kind of insane. I was like reflecting on like how cheap the show looks now, and I'm like, it used to look like this.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like we know that they still spend a lot of money on the show. So like I don't know if that means it's just going to all the actors' paychecks, or if it's like they're just spending it in the wrong places. Like Tim Minear is using it all for like plane CGI and B CGI and fake
helicopter
blood
chase
for
CGI.
Helicopter. God, he's such a menace. I need him off that show, and I need it now.
But coming back from the title card, through the mirror of my mind, the 118 is responding to the call, of course, and the stage manager is directing them to the rink, the stage, whatever you want to call it.
She has a great line where she says, "I haven't seen this much blood on the ice since a squirrel climbed into the Zamboni." Yeah, just a great little bit of horrific imagery.
When she said that, I couldn't stop picturing it. I just wrote down in my notes, oh. Oh.
It's like an extra violent situation that Scrat the squirrel from the Ice Age movies would find himself in.
Seriously, it's like an American Dad cutaway where like Scrat the squirrel fucking dies.
Damn. R.I.P. But immediately, once the 118 is there, one of my favorite details in this scene is we just see Buck like slipping and flailing around on the ice. I got like cute aggression here. He's like Bambi.
Yeah, it's very like a fawn learning to walk. It's like, or like if you ever like taken like your dog, like if you ended up with like a scenario where like your dog is like on like an icy patch, like maybe you went to like the mountains to go skiing and there's like a frozen like a patch of like water and your dog's like slipping around on it. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Buck
like,
dog.
Oh,
actually,
he was just born. He's never been in the world before.
That's actually not my first buck dog That's not my last buck dog comparison of the episode.
It's not even the show. It's not the show's first buck dog comparison.
No. And then hilarious. Bobby asks Chimney, what's the story, Chim? And Chim starts reciting the plot of Hansel and Gretel.
It's like, okay, wise guy. Now is not the time. A man just got all his fingers severed off.
Yeah, they're looking for the fingers.
Buck and Eddie have been assigned finger duty, which could mean nothing.
Which could mean nothing. And meanwhile, Hansel over here, he's propped up on his butt or whatever, with his back leaning against a giant gingerbread man. I was
a giant gingerbread man prop. I loved that.
Very charmed by that prop.
This whole call was so whimsical. I was loving it.
And obviously, like, his girlfriend is like still pissed at him. Like, the fight is still going on. Meanwhile, her foot is in his chest.
It's kind of reminiscent of that call, I think in season 2 where the girl gets her nose severed by the drone in the like tiki
Yeah.
bar. It feels a lot like that.
Very much like that.
But yeah, we see the skater, suddenly the skater who was dressed as the witch, like has all the gossip and starts kind of giving all the background on everything, which was funny. Hansel and Gretel ultimately kind of reconcile. They like get to the heart of their conflict. They realize like the guy says to the girl, he's like, you were going to give up Disney on Ice for me. And I know that's your dream. And she was like, no, silly. Like that wasn't my dream. I only ever wanted to skate here with you. And yeah, they reconcile. It's like, well, I guess everything's going to be okay.
They pull her foot out of the skate while keeping the skate in the guy's chest, and then to substitute it so that she doesn't have to walk across the ice on her bare foot, they give her an Ugg, and so you get this image of her like skating across the ice with one skate and one Ugg boot. It was very funny to me.
That, if you took like a black and white photo of that, it would have done numbers on 2013 Tumblr.
Oh, very much so. But then we go from that to a shocking revelation, because Bobby finds the sequin in the ice. He's doing his detective work.
Right.
And that segues us into...
He seems to know an awful lot about figure skating. And you're like, what's going on there?
And it turns out, it's revealed by Bobby's own admission that back in the days, the halcyon days of his Minnesota youth, he was three-time running. He and his partner Heidi were regional junior ice dancing champions.
Twin Cities junior pairs champions, 3 years running. He and Heidi Shotsky. What a lore drop. Even if the show does seem to...
Okay. So, no, let's talk about the lore in a second. I just want to say that we get a flash cut to Bobby in his costume, and he's doing a Bowie routine.
Yes, he has like a Bowie-inspired thing going on, and something about like this quick comedy cut to this flashback feels very Ryan Murphy in a way that this show doesn't always do. Like the sort of more satirical Ryan Murphy. And
you know Ryan loves David Bowie. I don't know if you guys watched season 4 of American Horror Story, but obviously like the through line on that was the song Life on Mars. It was Jessica Lange's sort of signature song on the show. She also sang Heroes, and they did Heroes and Glee and everything. So the hits, right? The hits, the Bowie hits.
But the real thing we need to talk about here, is the lore, because the show so infuriatingly totally forgot about this after it happened, which isn't uncommon for like these throwaway things. Although I was gonna say these throwaway things, like when we find out that Bobby has magic blood. But when you think about it, that wasn't really a throwaway thing. That was like the resolution of an entire episode, and it was framed as very emotional, and then they never mentioned it again.
I mean, that was a resolution of it, like an entire story arc, essentially.
Yeah, they never mentioned it again, and now you have, this is more of a throwaway joke, but notably in season 7, they do this backstory episode with Bobby where we find out that like at age like 12, like seemingly younger than what we see of him in this episode, he lost his father, and he like started drinking at that age, which like it's not impossible that Bobby could have been a child alcoholic and a figure skating champion.
He was a tortured artist.
It kind of does add a new, much sadder tone to this like funny, exuberant flashback to him triumphantly winning, you know, Twin Cities Junior Pairs Championship. You're like, oh damn, he was just like coming back every night, hitting the bottle. Tortured artist for real.
Okay, but then there's another layer to it, because I'm like, who was driving him to the competitions? Because we know it probably wasn't his cult leader mom.
Okay, so the cult leader mom storyline in season 8 also doesn't really make sense with what they showed us just one season earlier in season 7. Fuck you, Tim Minear, by the way. You are literally so bad at this. But my assumption there, like the best way I can try and make sense of it, is that Bobby probably did move back in with his mom after his dad died, because like where else would he have gone? Like, was he in foster care or something? They never really tell us. So that's great.
Okay, but then did mom take a break from like leading a cult to drive him to his figure skating lessons?
Well, my assumption was maybe she didn't go full cult leader until a little later. Like maybe in Bobby's adolescence, she was just kind of getting into the religion thing. and it got worse and worse. I don't know.
It's so convoluted. You know what I mean? It's so convoluted.
But I have to assume he went back and lived with his mom because, yeah, like we never hear that Bobby had like foster parents or like lived with a relative or anything. So I feel like you have to assume he must have gone back and lived with his mom and brother. And then maybe if we were to really do the show's homework for it, we could say, you know, the mom was gradually getting more and more like religious fanatic, and Bobby, you know, decided to leave home at 18 and never look back. Join the fire department.
Did Bobby's mom appear? This is a question that just came to mind, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. I feel like because everyone hated the Bobby's mom cult leader storyline. But did Bobby's family appear during his funeral?
Yes, we do see the mom in the crowd. We see the mom and brother.
We do?
Yep.
Okay.
They don't like make any note of it or have her like talk to anyone after, I don't think, but
that's why I didn't notice it. I feel like if your son died, you'd probably be a little chatty, right?
Well, well, it's crazy because we had just found out that she was dying.
What I mean is that shouldn't she have had some line of dialogue? Like, otherwise, what was the storyline for? You know what I mean?
Well, it was an Athena episode. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So the lore here doesn't really make sense in retrospect, but you know, that's that on that. And Eddie says, "I always thought you were a hockey player, Cap." And Bobby says, "Who says you can't do both?" Which I would argue feels like a gay Eddie moment.
Yes.
Like...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like a Troy Bolton moment. Not saying Troy Bolton is gay. I mean, he might be. He could be if he wanted to be. But it feels like, you know, this little moment of like, oh, Eddie, you can do both. You can be a macho man and a beautiful dancer. And I think Eddie really needs that.
He does, but he doesn't seem to be... to be buying into it too much, because you know you get a little like moment of like them like jokingly being like, "Oh, we're gonna look up pictures when we get home," right? And they're like, yeah. Specifically,
Buck says, "We'll Google for photos later," which no human being has ever said.
Right. And then a hard cut to Roadhouse. Like this, like cage fight feet. Sweaty Eddie, you know?
I just wrote, man, am I ready for this storyline to be over? Because something about the way this is like one of my grievances with the episode is we keep cutting to Eddie in the Fight Club with like rip-off Imagine Dragons type music playing in the background. Mm-hmm. And it's just like everything I'm not interested in seeing on screen. I'm seeing like sweaty men fighting. No offense to anyone who likes that sort of thing, but I'm seeing like sweaty men fighting in like a very macho kind of way. Like framing is a thing, right? And I do think sometimes you see sweaty man content in movies.
This isn't a Top Gun volleyball montage moment.
It doesn't feel like real homoerotic, like nice, sensitive, sweaty men fighting kind of stuff. It feels more like a very like aimed at men, like macho. You know, this is cool man fighting time. And yeah, like I said, the music they're playing in these scenes is very like Imagine Dragons, like just very kind of lame, like cool 2010s man music.
Yeah, no, it's very like Homeric by way of David Benioff. Like I agree. I carried so little. But I will say though, he was giving a little Wolverine from the back. So, you know, jot that down.
Wolverine from the back, you say?
Hello. And okay, so it's immediately established that this is a much shadier and more illegal Fight Club than the one that we saw before. They are placing bets. It is very unsanctioned.
Think like Spider-Man in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man right before Uncle Ben gets killed. I missed the part where that's my problem.
Right.
That's my Tobey
nice
Maguire
outfit.
impression.
Did your boyfriend buy it for you? Like, yeah.
People would say that to Eddie.
I will say, though, I stand beside my recurring observation that Eddie never looks better than when he does sweaty and covered in blood.
No, absolutely.
He looks so
great.
pooky. Especially in like the following scene after the fight. The fight choreography is like, it's like whatever, it's like fine. But then we get like to the moment of like he's getting his prize money. It's a lot. It's a 9K or whatever. And he just looks so baby girl. He just looks so like, you know, this is the I could be your girlfriend for the weekend. Be my
Right.
boyfriend for
And
the night.
I have to say, so yes, right after the fight, he's like collecting his money from the guy who apparently runs this operation. The set that they're in that scene, they're in like this shady, but obviously very like Hollywood, like a very styled set of a shady bathroom. And it has all of this like colorful graffiti on the bathroom stalls, which again looks like very deliberately designed. Like it's a little too bright and colorful, and it's like only on the stalls and nowhere else. I thought this set looks like it's straight out of Step Up Revolution. Like it's that sort of like cartoony, quote unquote, street style.
I'm not even the Step Up aficionado of our podcast. By the way, go watch Jane's Step Up video. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Go check it out. We're plugging.
Always be plugging.
But even I got Step Up vibes from this. And what does that tell you?
It's just very, if you watch like the very opening of Step Up Revolution, I'm pretty sure they do like the credits sequence in like CGI, like spray paint graffiti, something like that. And that's kind of the vibe of the whole movie. And it's just very, yeah, this set, I wouldn't be surprised if I heard it was a reused set from Step Up Revolution.
Wow. What a very interesting and on-brand connection.
Right? Ryan Guzman must have felt right at home on this set.
Yeah.
At the very end of this scene, we see Eddie like putting up his hoodie on his black hoodie, putting up his hood, which was so like cornball of him, I thought. Like he puts up his hood and then he walks away. It's like, okay, he's a bad boy now. We cut to Buck is like outside of work, smiling at something in the trunk of his car.
Looking like a dog with a stick.
Absolutely.
That was my other note.
So we don't know what is in his car yet, but then he sees Eddie pull up in a brand new truck. He says to Eddie, "Nice truck. A real life truck." Say
life
it with me,
truck.
guys. Shout out to our real life truck tier on our Patreon. And he's like, "Wow, like you didn't tell me you were getting a new car, like kind of low key, how did you afford this?" And Eddie's like, "Yeah, you know, the AC broke on my old one and I just saw the dealership and I decided to go buy a new truck." And he's like, "Oh, so a total impulse buy. That's not like you at all." Which I always think it's interesting when the show tells us things about Eddie, because sometimes you're like, huh, is that what I've been shown about Eddie? But I think this one is kind of in character. Like, yeah, he's a bit of a control freak.
It's one of those things that like you say it and like you believe that like that's like true, but like you don't necessarily see it. But like they say it and it's like within the realm of the world enough that you're like, okay, fine, I can accept this. I will say though, while I do understand impulse, like sort of splurging, whatever, you deserve a truck if you have the means, etc. What about the college fund?
True.
What about the college fund?
He probably doesn't even have one. No, he probably has made one at some point. But yeah, at times you're like, yeah, what's the situation there?
What's the situation?
Please have a 529, Eddie, please.
But Buck essentially like accepts it because it's really sexy when his, when the love of his life gets out of his new hot masculine truck.
Naturally.
And he's got bigger fish to fry because they walk inside. Buck has this, it's like a giant envelope or whatever with like something clearly kind of heavy inside. Then sort of we see Bobby coming into the fire station, right? Doing some like housekeeping, and everyone's gathered in the kitchen because this was unhinged to me because it's like it's a cutout. They all surprise him with a cutout, a cardboard cutout, life size, of a child Bobby Nash.
Yeah. And Buck explains this. Buck explains this as, "Oh, I found Heidi Shotsky, Bobby's old skating partner, and like she sent this to me." This has always been like, yes, it is a funny image, but also you're like, why would she have this? Like, why would this exist?
It raises so many questions.
It obviously looks like a much higher quality picture than would have been available with the technology of like the 1980s or whenever this would have been.
I like that you went to the technology of it because like I was thinking like the personality of like someone who would keep this. And also,
well,
like,
there's that too.
Like you said, why would it be made? First of all, he was a regional champion in a Minnesota, no shade to the Twin Cities, in a Minnesota ice dancing competition, right? And thank God Heidi was the one who had it, because I have questions about her, but like, imagine anyone else in the world having this.
Oh, I'm Bobby's old skating coach. I just kept this in my bedroom.
Like you're that episode of iCarly where they go to the teacher's house and find the Randy Jackson closet.
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah. Except it's worse because it's a
worse,
child.
Way worse. Right. And like at first I was like, first of all, Buck, how would you even approach a seller about like, can I have this?
Well,
but then I was
I doubt she was
why
just
would
selling
a seller have
Well,
this?
yeah, I don't think she had it for sale just publicly on like Facebook Marketplace. I hope. But presumably we're supposed to think she just had this like in her closet somewhere, but it's like, yeah, why would she have it in the first place, and why would she have kept it? But yes, I was also distracted by the fact that it clearly looks like a picture taken in the 2010s, like they didn't bother to even put like a film filter over it or something.
No grain or anything.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions.
Yeah. But Bobby gives his little, Ziggy Stardust thesis, but then we find out that and Buck is so sad. Pasta Thursday is canceled because they have a guest chef.
I thought it was very funny that Buck says, "So no pasta Thursday?" like a child.
And okay, Miss Angela with the post-perp walk glow. Okay, she is running that kitchen, like I was gonna say like the Navy, but no, she is running that kitchen like the bear.
Well, and Bobby is like backseat seasoning. Like Athena turns her back to get something out of the fridge and he like dumps in some seasoning, and I was like, okay, there's no indication that Athena is like bad at cooking. They just sort of imply that like Bobby is slightly better. So I feel like that was kind of out of pocket for him to do. I feel like that's not polite.
It's not polite, but then I mean you can't argue as well, with the results. He's kind of, eating his words a little bit. He's eating some humble pie because Miss Athena made brisket and it's delectable. Except
once they're sat down for family dinner, yes, Athena's talking about how she like slow roasted the brisket, and we see Buck pick up the salt shaker, about to salt his food, and Athena just like stares him down, like stares daggers at him until he puts down the salt shaker. Like it's such an insult to her that he would pick up the salt.
The power this woman has, because we saw like earlier, like the whole like kids moment, and they settle down. It's like the power of this woman. I'm like, oh my God, if she wasn't a cop, she'd be the best character ever. Right. And we get a passing mention of Athena Begins in this scene. Like Chimney is like talking about like Athena's suspension. Like, well, yes. Wow, it's crazy how they suspended you for solving a murder. And it's like, no, Chimney, don't do the propaganda, Chimney.
Yeah,
don't
like she was totally like off the job outside of her jurisdiction. But also, it is kind of weird, I think, then, that they allowed her to do the whole perp walk and then also suspended her. Yeah. Like, it made me think, like, okay, which is it? Like, was this sanctioned or not?
She was even shaking hands with everyone in, like, at the station, like, after the perp walk and everything, after they booked the guy.
And then we're meant to think that right after that, they were like, oh, by the way, Athena, like, this is so awkward, but we're actually gonna have to do some disciplinary action.
Elaine shows up and is like, you know what? Just for like our PR and our image, we are gonna suspend you without pay, but like don't take it personally. Like, good job.
It's just to like make it seem like on the book where we actually care about unethical behavior on the job,
which I will say is very in character for the police. So I guess that's good representation. Okay, so Hen gets a call from who called her?
Somebody named Cheryl. And Hen kind of apologizes, and she's like, after hearing whatever Cheryl has to say, she's like, I thought Karen was going to call you. So we don't really hear exactly what is happening here, but like something, Karen hasn't delivered on some thing that was planned or something like that.
Let's just say Karen did not divorce and Karen did not take the kids.
Apparently not.
Wasn't that a meme 6 years ago? Like Karen took the kids or whatever?
I don't know.
I vaguely remember that.
Probably.
But anyways, we go from that to, okay, so we have a call here that seems to be somewhat inspired by a case that I was just reading about the other day. So this is a funny coincidence. We have a dude, right? A husband, a father. He's a guy in a button-down shirt, quote unquote, driving a self-driving car. This is obviously some knockoff Tesla that we're seeing here.
He's on the phone with his wife while he's driving the self-driving car.
And he's sort of, she's encouraging him to be very cautious about it because he's gloating about how he doesn't even have his hands on the wheel. He's doing the Macarena, etc. And he starts to experience a cardiac incident.
Probably from doing the Macarena. That's strenuous stuff.
Probably it's very intensive, cardio workout. Like
Right.
these things happen. But he starts to, double over as one does when they're having a heart attack and lose consciousness. And before he loses consciousness, he, clicks the button on the screen to reroute to the hospital. If it didn't take the turn that it did, this would seem like just a genuine ad for Tesla.
Yeah, because what's funny is like his wife is like, oh my God, call 911. And he's like, no, I have a better idea. And yeah, like rerouting to the nearest hospital. But the wife, very smart lady, calls 911 for him. And there's a funny exchange where, she tells the dispatcher what's going on and they say, are you in the car with him? And she says, no, I'm home. And they say, then who's driving the car? And then like smash cut.
Oh, literal smash cut.
Yes, literal smash cut because boom, the car crashes into the hospital lobby. I think this is pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. And the GPS says, you have arrived.
Yeah.
It's a great
good.
comedy beat.
It is.
And a very high production value comedy beat
Again,
too.
yeah.
Those car crashing into room scenes are not cheap. So that's well done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really considered while watching the episode that, yes, a lot of the calls in this episode seem very high production.
Yeah. So the case that I was reading about was it's the first death from a car crash caused by a self-driving car.
Wow.
The man who died, his name is Joshua Brown. Or it was Joshua Brown. It's some context to this story. I'm just going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Some context to the story is that he was a Tesla enthusiast and a Musk glazer, as many men were in the late 2010s.
Some unfortunately still are.
Some unfortunately still are, but luckily we're setting those Cybertrucks on fire. Cut that out. I don't condone terrorism.
Okay.
Anyways, Joshua Brown, so he had survived a similar, like a near miss crash scenario before, thanks to the self-driving AI of his Tesla. Right. And he posted about it on Twitter. Musk like retweeted him and like that sort of furthered his obsession. The special part about this story is that he logged all of this on YouTube. Right. And he would live stream driving the self-driving car. And so there's like YouTube videos made about this. Actually, the YouTuber Nick Crowley talked about this as well. But essentially, one day, emboldened by this near miss experience that only served to solidify his faith in the car rather than question like, oh, I almost died because of my own recklessness, not paying attention to the road while the car drives itself. He went out on the road for a drive, as one does, and he did not have his hands on the steering wheel. I believe in the crash report, they found that it was 90% of the drive. Tesla, so I don't know if they still do this because I don't have a Tesla, but they, in this model of cars, they had a system where they could monitor how often your hands were actually on the wheel. And it appeared that for about 90% of the drive, his hands were off the wheel.
Oh my God.
And they instituted warnings because you're supposed to have your hands on the wheel just in case of an emergency scenario, even when it's driving itself.
Which does kind of defeat the whole self-driving thing, I would think.
The car audibly warned him to keep his hands on the wheel 6 times.
Jeez.
And visually another 7 times. But when the car was going 70 miles per hour, it jackknifed a semi-truck, killing him instantly.
Wow.
And it was the very first death attributed to a self-driving car. And it happened at a very similar time as this call. So it leads me to believe that there was some inspiration taken from some stories in the news around that time period. So,
not improbable. Self-driving cars, I guess it could be a thing someday. I think we're still in such early stages that I would not really trust something like that. And certainly if anyone's going to try it, I would think follow all of the safety recommendations, like keeping your hands on the wheel if that's what they recommend.
Yeah, and like uses sparingly, like as a novelty, like the
Right.
3D on the 3DS or something. Like I don't even use, when I'm driving in my car, I don't even use cruise control because I feel like I'm too out of control of the vehicle when I do that.
I mean, part of the reason I have not learned to drive yet is like I have a lot of anxiety around it. And part of that anxiety comes from like dumbasses like this who just, I mean, you know, no offense to this real life guy who died, but you know, the fact that you already have to deal with like reckless people on the road who are actually driving. And then now there's an occasional person possibly not even driving at all and like leaving it all in the hands of technology partially conceived by an absolute maniac.
Well, what's interesting about this call is that even if it is inspired, as my theory states, that it was inspired by this story or similar stories, because other things have happened in a similar vein, it does diverge and go in a different direction where instead of getting into a crash on the road, the car crashes into a hospital.
Right.
Which I don't think there's ever been a reported instance of, but it is funnier for TV.
Yeah, but I think sometimes the show likes to turn a real life tragic call into a more lighthearted call, perhaps to not be like dealing too seriously with a real life event, even though I'm sure it's arguable that making light of it is like worse. I don't know, whatever. But it's like when they did the vat of chocolate thing where like in real life, the cases of that I could find, like people had died horribly in a situation like that. So yeah, they do something a little more silly with it where and like we said, it is a great bit of like physical comedy to have the guy just smash into the hospital instead of, and like the who's driving the car. So yeah, the 118 shows up. I wrote in my notes, they rescue the driver, or should I say the non-driver, because you know
the non-driver,
he was not driving. There's a doctor lodged in like the crushed lobby, so they're trying to rescue that person. Hen and Chimney express that they're feeling redundant since they're like already at a hospital full of doctors, so like every time they try and treat someone, they just get carted away by the doctors.
I will say it's an interesting scenario here because like the guy who was driving the car, air quotes, he isn't at fault for this crash at all.
Arguably,
it's entirely like a consequence of the technology malfunctioning, right?
And I guess like you could
hence
say
the title.
Like we said, like you're supposed to have your hands on the wheel, but if he was having a genuine medical emergency, then yeah, that probably takes away any fault of his. Like
it even says that like he was like passed out at the wheel, right? Like he lost consciousness. His wife said that in the 911 call. Who's driving the car? Everything. Like I will say, for as bad as this was, if he did have that heart attack on the road, it could have been possibly even worse. We see like a pile-up scenario, and I think it's season 4 or 5, and that's no good. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to the self-driving car thing, but this is just a very funny scenario of it going horribly wrong, even though it's supposed to be going right. Like it did take him to the hospital, but it didn't cross the finish line.
It's sort of like,
or it crossed it too hard.
It's sort of like a classic joke about like automation in navigation. It's like that classic episode of The Office where like they try and follow the GPS like really, really faithfully, and it ends up like driving the car into a lake. Kind of a classic type of joke to make about like, oh, it'll like technically be right, but it's actually wrong.
They're at the hospital.
Well, they get the doctor out. They kind of rescue everybody, figure it out.
They have this muscle memory response where they wheel the fucking like guy on the gurney, and then the doctors are just like looking at them kind of glaringly, and they're like, you got this. It's fine.
So they kind of realize they actually don't have that much work to do now that they've gotten the woman out. And suddenly Hen gets a call from home. She sees it's from home and she kind of rushes off to answer it. It's Denny. It's obviously important. So I guess maybe we can take back being so appalled at Buck answering calls on the job, because I guess Hen does it too. But she had kind of more of a reason to think something was wrong at home.
And also her job was done. She wasn't actively putting out a fire.
True. That is also very true. We see her arriving home. She finds Karen in bed, depressed, apparently. Presumably Denny called, like, because she won't get out of bed. Karen says she doesn't feel well, and Hen is obviously concerned. We kind of are getting context that ever since the IVF didn't work out, their embryos failed, Karen has been really grieving and kind of has yet to, I don't want to say snap out of it. Like this whole, I feel like in some ways,
snap out of it.
I always feel like in some ways Hen is being a little harder on Karen than she needs to be. I can kind of see both sides of it. Like we eventually hear how Hen is feeling kind of frustrated with Karen, like really wishing she could just, you know, Hen feels like she grieved but then like got up and moved on with her life, and obviously Karen isn't ready to do that yet. I always get a little bit of a sense that like she could be more empathetic here, but I don't know. I do see both sides of it. But anyway, Karen has been like kind of bedridden, like really depressed ever since this has happened, and Karen gets kind of angry with Hen when she implies that Hen just says something that like very gently implies that Karen's like taking too long to grieve. She says something like, you're still upset about this, and Karen takes offense to that.
But before they can like really have like a blow up argument about it, Denny comes in with he brought the tea.
He brought tea for
he
Karen.
Spilled.
Yeah, he spills a little on the bed, and Karen like really blows up at him, yells at him, and like immediately apologizes, but obviously she's very on edge, and you know, she tries to make it better. She's like, you know what, like you go back to the kitchen and like I'll come out in a second and we'll all have dinner together. And clearly Denny is like missing that. He's like, together. He's a really adorable child actor, as always.
It's so sweet. Then you know, we get a very honest conversation between Hen and Karen, where Karen sort of verbalizes that, you know, she, you know, sees Hen as like compartmentalizing her grief, because Hen is very insisting on that, like she's feeling it too.
Well, Hen says something where she's like, you know, I'm grieving too. I also got attached to the idea of a new baby. And then Karen hears that and she's like, well, I guess that's the difference. Like, you think of this as just an idea. These weren't just an idea to me. Like, those embryos were actually a part of me. So she kind of, they were about to like kind of see each other's side of it. And then Karen kind of goes cold again. She goes back to bed. So sorry, Denny. I guess we're not having dinner together, actually.
Pizza again. Oh. Well.
Yep. It's box mac and cheese again.
But then we go to Buck's loft, and it's Buck, Chim, and Maddie. Do you think he ever gets tired of third wheeling for them?
I wonder. But we have, you know, here in this scene, Chimney is talking about what might be going on with Hen. You know, he and Buck are concerned about it. Buck immediately changes the subject to Eddie, which could mean nothing.
Yeah, which could mean nothing.
He wonders whether, like, all this weird stuff going on with everybody is because of the Santa Ana winds, which I had, like, never heard of this phenomenon before this show, but I guess there's, like, a little bit of, like, California superstition about the seasonal Santa Ana winds and like making people crazy, because
the Santa Ana winds like are associated with wildfires and everything, and rising like heat waves and everything. So it's kind of like the summer of Sam, right, in New York, where like the heat
it's enough
made
to drive
everyone
a man
like
mad.
Fucking lose their minds. Yeah, all it takes is one bad day, right? But they, you know, they sort of they get onto the conversation topic of like how, you know, when they're, you know, on like a 24-hour shift, like they kind of just like tell each other everything about everything that's going on in their lives. And Maddie, as Chim's partner, is very uncomfortable with this idea.
Well, she's like, do you really tell Hen everything, like, about me? Because, you know, you tell Hen and she tells Buck, and then suddenly everybody knows about it. But when she realizes that this is kind of an inevitability that she can't stop, she confesses to Buck that she's back in therapy. I guess she hadn't had this conversation with him before. She's back in therapy because her job made her, because she got this complaint filed against her for this alleged stalking incident.
I love these ensemble shows that will like just bring up a storyline in like mention it in one episode so that the actor earns their paycheck. We make jokes about it, but like that's such a trope, right? I mean, in like these big ensemble shows, and it's so funny to me.
I mean, to be fair, you could also say that it's sort of like housekeeping for the show to sort of make sure all the characters are like caught up and on the same page. Because we haven't seen Buck and Maddie have a conversation about this. So this kind of clears the air and makes sure that everybody's aware of it.
And also remind people that they're siblings because
they have a
separated in age and don't look alike. So you kind of forget at some point.
If somebody's dropping into an episode, they might not immediately assume they're siblings. Yeah, she tells Buck about what's been going on. She shares, like, this woman thinks I went too far and invaded her privacy, which could be a lesson for you guys, Chimney and Buck, like invading people's privacy. But they clearly don't internalize that because Chimney's immediately like, so what do you think is going on with Eddie? And then we cut to Eddie in the fight club again. This was where I really thought it sounded like fake Imagine Dragons. For all I know, it could have been actual Imagine Dragons, but I didn't recognize the specific song, so I kind of assumed it was fake Imagine Dragons, but who knows?
It wasn't real Imagine Dragons. Okay. It was, I mean, it's on the level of like,
it sounded just Imagine like
Dragons. I hate making this comparison because like there's no comparing Imagine Dragons and Queen, and even mentioning those two bands in the same sentence feels like sacrilege because
so it is rude to say to me specifically.
But it also has kind of a similar vibe to that fuck ass Jukebox the Ghost song that we ruined for Kyla.
Sorry, Kyla.
Sorry, Kyla. Just like it's like how low can you get that like. You're not even doing bad Queen. You're doing bad Imagine Dragons, an already bad band.
It's one thing to do a Queen pastiche because at least you can write that off as like honest artistic pastiche. Imagine Dragons pastiche is not really defensible as pastiche because it's a modern, like, current band. That's just like ripping off an already lame band.
I read on the IMDb on the the soundtrack that there was a Papa Roach song. I assume it was one of these fight scenes, but I'm not a Papa Roach fan, so like I don't know which one it was.
I'm gonna be honest, I've heard of Papa Roach. I have no idea. Like I couldn't tell you like what that person or band looks. I looked them up.
They did that Last Resort song. They did that.
Oh.
Yep. This is my last resort, which is a good song.
They kind of look how I would expect. Jane roasts another band for the way they look, which is totally a very nice thing of me to do. I'm just seeing so many soul patches right now.
Yeah.
I mean, good for them if they've found their niche. And I'm sorry, they annoy me less visually than Jukebox the Ghost. At least they don't look like hipster assholes. They just look like leather jacket dads, you know?
Yeah, it's like pure like Gen X, you know, like Gen X burnouts, we can say.
Yeah, I don't know if they're even burnouts. I mean, they have a hit song. Wow, I can't believe I'm being nicer to these people than Jukebox the Ghost. Sorry again, Kyla. Anyway, so we cut to Eddie. I wrote in my notes, this is literally torture to me. Because the combination of like the scene that was happening and the song that was playing, I was like, oh my God, like get me out of here. But Eddie kicks the guy he's fighting in the face. The guy goes down. Eddie like celebrates for a second and then sees that the guy has started choking. Medic Eddie on full display. He starts administering first aid. He tells the guy in charge to call 911. The guy's like, no, you can't call 911 on my illegal operation. Like, don't you dare. But Eddie unblocks the guy's airway. It turns out he was choking on his own nasal bone, which got like knocked into his cranial cavity before going down his throat. Pretty nasty.
Yeah. He could be leaking spinal fluid right now, and like it's a big emergency.
Yeah. Eddie just like grabs a guy's phone to call 911. He goes against the Big Daddy Fight Club wishes. And
well, I'm surprised they're even allowed to have their phones at this underground illegal fight club like out, you know, like what are they going to do? Record it so they can post it on Instagram?
Rule number 1 of the fight club should be you don't get access to your phone in the fight club. Like in a modern fight club.
Exactly. Like what are you going to do? Film it like it's a concert? Like you're going to see Sabrina Carpenter? Come on.
Well, if Ryan Guzman was in the fight club, I would be filming it like it was a concert. But rule number 1 of the fight club is don't tweet about the fight club. Anyway, the fire department arrives, and it's not the 118, it's what, the 122? Whatever Lena's squad is.
Lena Bosco is on the scene, and obviously this is very awkward for Eddie because, like, as a paramedic, he has like an ethical obligation to stay and make sure the guy survives.
Eddie's going, oh, this is so awkward.
But also, if there was one firehouse that, like, I mean, this is kind of like a saving grace for him because, like, if it was any other firehouse, he would just be like, you know, up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. But they're doing CPR on the guy. Lena recognizes that, like, someone helped him.
Yeah, she finds the bone And she's like, somebody must have cleared his airway. And then, yeah, she sees Eddie lurking up in the rafters like the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
Like with all this dramatic lighting.
Wait. I love that. I love the idea of Ronda Rousey and Ryan Guzman as Christine and Eric.
Listen.
The Broadway revival.
The ultimate mid-off. No, I'm sorry.
No, it is the ultimate mid-off, because then we go to like a scene of like Lena confronting Eddie. This whole like a sequence of events here is like the ultimate.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's most egregious in this episode because like they're pushing Rhonda to do like serious acting, and she does not have the range for it. And Ryan is like playing off of nothing and giving nothing. Right. And so they're like having this like very tense exchange, and you're like, oh my God, I can't. Can I skip? Can I skip forward?
It's pretty stilted. Here's the thing. I have come around to some of Ryan Guzman's acting. I think he's gotten better over the years. And I think he's best in sort of situations that don't demand that much of him. I know it sounds very mean whenever I talk about this, but I think he's best in sort of like, as I've said before, he's good at comedy. He's good at the lighthearted stuff. He's good when he just has to like rattle off lines in a decently convincing way. But when you're asking him to do more dramatic material, especially in these early seasons when they hadn't quite figured out the character, I think sometimes it comes off a little silly, a little wooden. And then, he is definitely the better actor of the two, because then you have Ronda Rousey, who's like, she doesn't have bad screen presence, I don't think. Like, I think there's a reason she's like a famous fighter. Like, she has like a presence about her and like kind of a power, but I think
she's a showman, you know?
Yeah, but I think again with her too, when you ask her to do something more dramatic, she's clearly like, it's clearly not her first career, right? And so when you have them together doing, I think I made a joke about they're having a mid-off in my YouTube video about 911, but like you have them talking to each other about like, you could have killed him, Eddie. And then Eddie's like tap out or knockout. That's the rules. And it's just like, it's like Disney Channel or something.
They're both doing these like really like intense cartoony faces too. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, it's a fight on Ant Farm.
Right? It really feels like they're little kids or something.
It's on the level of like Sky Jackson auditioning for Euphoria.
Oh my God.
I did not enjoy this scene at all. I did not enjoy the scene that followed it.
No, I enjoyed it, but for the wrong reasons.
But Lena basically, she smuggles Eddie out of the fight club, like incognito. Like
she gives him her turnouts.
But then, you know, they have to roll out. So she says to him, I actually like this line. She goes, "We're not done talking about this." I'm like, that feels like kind of like characters with a dynamic line. Like I enjoyed that because it felt their relationship felt like a little bit more lived in.
Right. I really don't mind other than the quality of the acting, I really don't mind Eddie and Lena's moments in this episode from a writing perspective. It's just kind of unfortunate in retrospect because we know that this is like the last time we will see Lena. And it feels like that's kind of disappointing that like all of that was not really going anywhere that meaningful. But yeah, there's a moment later on that I really like between the two of them. But Lena tells Eddie that he needs to talk to someone, but Eddie is really not having it. So Lena just leaves. She has to go with her squad. They're leaving.
And we go from that to Hen and Athena at the Grant household. Bobby has taken May and Harry to learn how to ice skate.
Yeah.
And they are not the bored, you know, gremlins or whatever, like addicted to their phone. They actually seem jazzed about it. So that's very sweet. Bobby's going to teach them a skill they didn't have before. He's really assimilated into the family unit.
It's very cute.
I like this a lot.
I kind of wish we could have seen this scene. I would have loved to see Bobby teaching Athena's kids how to skate.
I just know Corinne would have eaten it up too. Like I would have loved to see her do that. So Athena, she's basically consoling Hen about like sort of the IVF thing and sort of counseling her because Hen is like talking about.
Did you say IDF?
No, okay. So Athena said, I said IVF, and Athena said IVF in the episode as well.
And I was like, that would be a really unfortunate Freudian slip.
Well, I heard IDF when Athena said it, and so that's just a lose for our brains. Okay. I think that's just 2025 brain rot.
It's possible,
and that's bad for us and for the world.
True.
But basically, their conversation boils down to this. Hen is processing this grief and on a faster timeline than Karen basically it's this really ugly dark part of her that she doesn't want to confront, but she feels it, over the past few weeks, which is that she feels a sense of anger at Karen for dwelling on her grief and sort of indulging in it in this way. She hates herself for being angry with Karen, but when she comes home and the house is a mess and Denny's parked in front of the TV and he hasn't had anything to eat but cookies and chips and whatever, she just gets this rage, this primal rage, that Karen's not being a parent, and she has this feeling of like, we lost these embryos, but your family is still here. We're still here, and we need you. And we're getting this incredible performance from Aisha Hines in this scene. This monologue is incredible, and she's giving it her all. It's so, so good.
It is good. And yeah, in the past, I've watched this episode and thought that Hen was being a little unfair, but it actually didn't hit me quite as bad this time. I kind of, like I said, I can really see both sides of it. I think if it ever does feel uneven, it's mostly probably just because we don't get to see Karen's POV as much. So like, it's hard to know like how unreasonable she's really being if you only ever see Hen's side of it.
Yeah, it doesn't really invite you to, I guess, put yourself in Karen's shoes because she's not a POV character. And so, we don't really get an inside look at, her depression or like the toll this kind of grief can take on a person. We just see Hen's perspective. But I do think that like Hen's perspective from like a narrative sense is also valuable, and so I don't hate that choice. Although as someone who, has dealt with plenty of grief and depression in his life, I would have, enjoyed seeing more of Karen's side of things so that we can get a more well-rounded picture of things.
And I guess just like having not seen like the time actually passing, because as we've pointed out in the last couple episodes, they've really sort of skimmed over whatever's happening with Hen and Karen. And so we're kind of seeing it as like, they got this news and now this is the next thing we're seeing of it. So I think it also sometimes feels to me like, like, is it really that crazy for Karen to still be grieving after this short of a period of time? But I think more time is supposed to have passed. It's like 3 weeks or something. I don't know, even 3. I don't know. I guess there's also, it's just, it feels like on the one hand, like this is a big deal for Karen. And, she feels like not just that she's lost these specific embryos, but like that this means that she will never have biological children of her own, which can be a very, very difficult thing for certain people to deal with. So I don't know. There's part of you that just wants to be like, come on, like this is to me, like seems like a pretty sympathetic situation. And it feels like sort of almost like with the Buck lawsuit thing, like we're not getting a lot of like acknowledgement of the pain of that for her, but at least she does get to express that to Hen in this episode earlier. So, and
to add some context to this conversation that Hen is having with Athena, I mean, she's not just like saying this off the dome. Like she's not. This isn't just the thing that she says to people. Like Athena has specifically sort of curated a space where Hen can speak freely without judgment, and is sort of there to listen.
Yes, and Hen does say she feels awful for feeling that way. So it's definitely also like those sort of thoughts that are sort of maybe mean or like unsympathetic, but you just feel that way because as Athena points out, she knows that Hen is exhausted, which will be relevant later. Hen is exhausted and she kind of just needs an outlet to express this. So she assures Hen that Karen will come back to her eventually, and also that Athena will be there for her in the meantime.
This is why everyone should be in therapy, by the way. This is why everyone should be in therapy.
Because Athena, unfortunately, Angela Bassett can't be all of our therapists. We wish.
Unfortunately, we wish. Or wouldn't you just love to like have like a moment where like Angela Bassett is sitting you down and is like, you know what, this is a judgment-free zone. Just like tell me like everything, and I know all of this already.
At like one of those Hollywood auctions.
An evening with Angela where she listens to your problems.
An hour of therapy with Angela Bassett in character as Athena Grant. Anyway, we go to the 118. Eddie is arriving for work in the morning. Bobby immediately asks him to come up for a talk. Eddie's like, I was going to go change. Bobby's like, no, we're going to talk now. It's very like when your parent says we need to talk or whatever, very kind of intimidating. And Eddie sees Lena leaving. And he finds out she's just talked to Bobby about the Fight Club. So, of course, Eddie assumes that Lena has sold him out. He gets really mad. He's like, I thought we were friends. And this is the moment I like between them. Because Lena, well, first of all, the way she frames this is she's like, what's my cat's name? And Eddie's like, what?
Right.
And she's like, I know about all of your baggage. I know about your kid. I know about your dead wife. I know about all your shit you're going through. You don't know anything about me. You don't even know what my cat is named. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what your cat's name is. And then she's like, for the record, I don't have a cat, which is a funny way to conclude it. But basically she's saying, like, it's a one-way street with you, Diaz. Like, I have been there for you and learned all this stuff about you and like kind of taken in all your baggage and tried to help you, and you've never gone the other way with it. Which I think is this kind of interesting thing that we get about this situation that we never follow up on. Like, I like
never
it as
follow up on.
I like it as an individual moment, but it's interesting, right? That like, especially, I'm sorry, not to sound like an Eddie hater. This is just me more being frustrated at Eddie's writing. Which apparently is the same as hating Eddie, the person, the sweet little baby boy, but
who exists and is real and has feelings,
and is real and has feelings. But given that Eddie was just like yelling at Buck for like being selfish and making everything about him, it's like, okay, so here we're getting some feedback from one of Eddie's supposed friends that he actually is the selfish one who never asks about her life, who kind of just uses her as like an outlet to complain about his baggage and never really. It's a one-way street. I don't know. It's just another case of, like, I think the show not really knowing what's going on with Eddie. It's like, well, is he a good friend? Is he not? Is he a selfish person? Is he the person who other people are selfish to? Was he like this just with Lena, or is he like this with other people? Seemingly not. Is this like a way he is with women? Seemingly not. It's just not really something we unpack.
Well, I will say gay Eddie ding. Not to give you too much material for, our cross-examinations.
That we're going to record directly after this.
Eddie Diaz, hello. Maybe there's an intentional contrast here with this and his episode with Buck, where you see Eddie putting a lot of effort and work into his relationship with Buck and feeling so betrayed with the whole thing, versus with Lena, one of his women friends. He sort of sees her as this person that can support him, and he can vent all these things too, and doesn't have to follow up on like sort of an almost like maternal figure where there's an intrinsic one-way street. Maybe it's a little I don't know. Maybe it's a little Freudian. I don't know.
And we did say that Eddie seemingly has kind of a mommy thing where it seems like his whole relationship with Shannon was really based in her being a mommy to him. Although I will say, for any gay men out there, being gay, I guess I would say, doesn't give you an excuse to think of all women as just people you don't have to take seriously as people, because that's the thing.
Well, damn, there goes my pride plans,
right? I was gonna walk all over women for pride.
This is what they meant when they said women's march, right?
Right. It's the women's stampede, and they're the stampede victims.
They're the road paved with good intentions.
It's like I agree with and get what you're saying, but it's funny that like, he wasn't even apparently trying to pursue Lena romantically. It's just like, that's not even just how he sees the women he dates. That's just how he sees women, period. Yeah.
And the only women in his life that he has a close relationship with are like Hen. That's it. And she doesn't stand for that.
And also, like, we don't really ever see them being, like, friends. Like, they don't have, like, one-on-one check-ins in the way that she and Buck do. We see him have, like, one scene with Hen and Karen in season 8, like, the most recent season. And I think that's one of the first times.
Do you think he treats TT like this, Tia Peppa?
I hope not. But she's probably another mommy to him.
Yeah, that's true.
So I like this moment individually because I think it's kind of interesting, and I like it for Lena. I like that she has the self-respect to identify that this is going on and just like leave and be like, fuck it. Like, I'm not going to be your friend if this continues. And at the same time, I think it's unfortunate that, we don't really unpack this. It doesn't seem to lead to any meaningful change in Eddie.
Yeah. But Lena fucks off, and Eddie goes up to face Bobby's judgment, as she should. And Eddie goes up to face Bobby's judgment, right? And it turns out, right, that Lena did not rat him out. In fact, it was her captain who recognized Eddie from the tsunami that ratted him out to Bobby. And Lena was there when Bobby showed up to the station to plead with him to take a more like take in the full picture and basically go soft on Eddie, right?
Yeah, which, you know, Eddie immediately says, like, oh, I guess I owe her an apology. And I just wrote in my notes,
and then never
would have
apologizes.
Would have been great if we could have seen that.
Yeah.
So once again, it's like, well, that's an interesting moment. Too bad there's never any follow-up. So, you know, Bobby starts trying to unpack this whole thing that's going on with Eddie. Eddie, in typical Eddie fashion, says, it's nothing. I'm fine. You know, he's repressing everything. Bobby thinks that this whole thing is about control. This is a story about control. My control.
Control of what I say, control of what I do. Sorry.
And Bobby says, you're the guy who always keeps it.
Way. I can't.
Bobby says, you're the guy who always keeps it together no matter what life throws at you. So once again, this is kind of like what my argument against the whole anger issues storyline was with Eddie, is like, it felt a little too coming out of nowhere for a guy whose only real consistent character trait has been that he's like calm and collected. So it's one thing to show that he's like actually always had this stuff simmering under the surface and now it's all coming out. But like, again, I don't think we really had a clear point A to point B there. But I think this is an interesting moment for gay Eddie because we get more from Bobby about how repressed Eddie is. He even has this line after where he says, I just want to make sure you don't think you have to lose everything before you can allow yourself to feel anything. And it's like, oh, so you're telling me Eddie represses his every emotion? You're telling me he's so repressed and never allows himself to feel? And, you know, Eddie has a line saying, Christopher needs me to be in control. You're saying you feel like you have to be strong and unemotional and somehow like performatively correct for the sake of other people. I thought that was interesting, you know? This
is reminiscent of something in a meta context, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But anyways, I do like the character work that is happening here with Eddie. Like I will agree that like as much as it is a good dissection of like what's been going on in Eddie's life recently, there's a problem that happens where when you don't actually convey that in the text and you need another like neutral third party to come in and tell you what the story's about after the fact, that's kind of an indictment of the story, right? Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
So while I enjoyed it in the moment as like actual character exploration for Eddie, and I understood what they were getting at, and I liked that angle, it did speak to a narrative flaw that kind of plagued this whole storyline.
Right. Like, could we see him having moments where he feels the need to always be in control for Christopher? Like,
yeah, we don't really get that.
The last scene we had between him and Christopher was him telling Chris, like, it's okay to feel sad, which is kind of the opposite of the problem we're hearing he has now. We also hear Eddie say
that's an oopsie.
Yeah, we also hear Eddie say he feels like he's let Christopher down a lot of times. And then he starts kind of getting into like the stuff that really bothers me about his framing of his and Shannon's relationship. I'm sorry this is turning out to be such a Jane hates Eddie episode, but to be clear, it's like I'm mad on behalf of Eddie. I'm mad for what this has forced Eddie's character to be. So I was liking earlier in this scene what he was expressing until he starts expressing basically regret for quote unquote letting Shannon back into Christopher's life. He says like she had already broke his heart once and he was so afraid she was going to do it again, and then she did, and Bobby's like, no, she died. And so obviously in this scene he is supposed to be somewhat irrational here, like these feelings
and sort of like mirroring Hen's feelings with the Athena conversation.
But it still feels like he has this like unfair, unsympathetic view of Shannon that never really goes questioned by the show. And I don't like that. Like, you know, his view of Shannon as like, I'm mad at her for leaving me twice. It's like that. He still expresses that emotion in season 7, right? As recently as the end of season 7. And it's never questioned by the show. It kind of makes it seem like that is, you know, a feeling he needs to get over so that he can get on with his life. But no one ever seems to really question, like, are you even right for feeling that way? Like, should you maybe get a different perspective on it? And that pisses me off.
When
I'm
Hen
like,
was
okay.
going through her feelings, like Athena was there to say, like, you know, you're not a bad person for feeling this way. We all have irrational emotions, and highlighting
and
that.
Hen was there to be like, I feel terrible for feeling this way. But Eddie never says anything like that.
Because he lacks introspection.
Yeah,
you know?
like, it's like, oh, I hate my bitch wife who had postpartum depression because she, like, left because her mom was dying and she had postpartum depression, implicitly. And then she came back and then she got hit by a car, so fuck her. You know, I get, like, I can see that he's supposed to not be super rational in this scene, but I also think that part never truly gets unpacked or kind of rectified by the show. Again, as recently as the end of season 7.
That's the problem for me, how unexamined it goes, because it betrays a lack of curiosity on that front. I actually was fully kind of on board with this, like, moment for Eddie, because it did feel very realistic. You know, like, when someone dies and you have all these unresolved feelings, it's very, very common to end up resenting that person for dying because they left you, in a sense. And that will never go away. They're gone forever. You know what I mean? And what I was picking up on from this is that Eddie is taking this all on as like a personal failing of himself, as an indictment of himself, which, you know, it's like a moment of Eddie is extremely, extremely hard on himself and internalizes all of these things. And so I really connected with that and kind of identified with that. And I thought that Ryan's acting really sold it. I thought
this
that
was a good scene for him.
He was actually giving a really good performance in this scene. There was a lot of subtlety in, like, his gestures, like his you could tell it was coming from, like, kind of a real place, not to get, like, meta with it or anything. But it did feel like it was coming from, like, a real place in the context of, like, Eddie Diaz, the fictitious human being who is real and has feelings.
Yeah, we're not trying to be parasocial. However, there is a real, like, public 911 branded, like, moment of Ryan Guzman interview where all the actors are being asked, like, you know, how do you cry on camera? How do you cry on command? And Ryan Guzman says something along the lines of, like, well, when you repress all your emotions for 30 years, it's like you just turn it on and off or whatever. And you're like, whoa, okay.
Just let it all out, right?
Yeah, go to therapy, first of all. Maybe he does. But
maybe he does. Maybe painting is his therapy.
People are often pointing out that Tim Minear seems to have this, like, fixation on writing real life elements of Ryan Guzman's life into the show. Like, I didn't mention it earlier, but of course, Eddie being in a fight club at all feels like very much just an excuse to have former MMA fighter Ryan Guzman do fighting on screen. And this too feels, I mean, I don't know that Tim Minear knew at the time that Ryan Guzman had supposedly repressed his emotions a lot in his young life, but it is weird that that's, like, a big element of Eddie, and then also apparently like, publicly a self-proclaimed big part of Ryan Guzman.
But this is also very TV, you know, like, very famously, like, you know, Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk and Ian Brennan, like, when they were doing Glee, they would, like, pick up on things that were happening in the actor's life and write that into episodes, to the point where, like, the actors were really noticing and asked Brad about it in an interview years later.
Right, but it does seem like it happens disproportionately to Ryan Guzman on this show compared to the other actors.
Disproportionately is definitely the word. Because, like, someone in our comments pointed out that, like, in season 2, in, like, the Taylor Kelly episode, when Hen is giving her backstory about, like, you know, being saved by the paramedics, it was actually coming from a moment in Aisha Hines' life that they wrote into Hen's character. That then got kind of, you know, futzed around with the Hen Begins episode. Whatever. But it does feel disproportionate to Ryan Guzman, maybe because his life is all they really have to draw on for Eddie, because he's such a thinly written character.
Because, like, I believe all of, like, so, you know, the fighting thing comes in. We finally in season 8 got word that Eddie used to be a dancer, which is sort of, I mean, Ryan Guzman didn't grow up dancing as far as I know, but he danced famously in Step Up 4 and 5. And there's also...
Watch Shane's video.
Eddie is from Texas. I believe Ryan Guzman's from Texas. I've heard people say that, like, Ryan Guzman's actual dad's name is Ramon, and so is Eddie's dad's name, which is a little crazy. There are a couple other things I think here and there. And to be fair, they do also mention Eddie being an excellent dancer in season 5. There's a classic line. It might be season 4. I forget. But he says, "Lucky for you, I'm an excellent dancer," in kind of a New York accent for some reason. We'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway, basically,
Eventually.
I was just, it brought up some of the Shannon things that bother me. Finally, at the end of this scene, Eddie admits to Bobby that Shannon asked for a divorce right before she died. And Eddie says, "I'm still mad." And I just wrote in my notes, like, why? It's one thing, like you said, this realistic, like, resentment of a dead person. And also, like I said, I don't think the show ever does enough to be like, hey, so that is irrational. And like, should you maybe, like you said, do some introspection on what your relationship to Shannon actually was. He says, my God, he says, I just kind of got angry at this as I was watching the episode. He says, "I'm angry at a dead person and myself because I forgave her for everything and it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough." And yes, he's obviously angry at himself, but I just don't love this attitude. Like, as if she owed him something. For one, he said, letting her back into her son's life, forgiving her, like doing these kind of bare minimum things, and thinking it means she like owed him her love or body or something. And again, I know it's not supposed to be 100% rational here, but his anger towards Shannon never seems questioned by the show as late as season 7. And I wish they would let Eddie stop being angry at Shannon. I feel like it's been dragging his character down for so long. I feel like we need the time, when he had his whole Kim storyline, that wasn't him actually resolving this issue. It was just him yelling at fake Shannon, still mad at her. Nothing was actually resolved there.
Anyway, the post-mortem entitlement is strong. And is it rational? No. Is it examined by the show? No. But you know what? Whatever. Like,
many such cases with Eddie Diaz.
And basically it ends with Bobby giving him a slap on the wrist, as dads often do with their shit-eating sons. So that's the end of that storyline. Thank God. Hey, can everyone just say thank God the Fight Club storyline is over?
Thank God the Fight Club storyline is over. I am so happy. So happy.
So we transition out of Eddie getting talked down to and whatever, and we go into a very scathing indictment of Amazon's warehouse policies.
Yes, a very clear spoof of Amazon and sort of the bad labor practices they were going a little viral for back in the time that this episode came out. We've got like an Amazon style warehouse.
Hey Jane,
what?
Did you ever see the musical Urinetown?
Oh, I was in the musical Urinetown in high school.
Oh, you were in Urinetown, so you know where I'm going with this.
I played a character called Soupy Sue, and that was
fabulous.
Me. I had one line of solo singing, I think.
Yes, come on, Soupy Sue.
Yep, that was I.
Well, on the subject of Urinetown, this manager of this Amazon-esque warehouse is getting down on the team for their arbitrary productivity ratings being lower than the corporate office demands. So in order to re-up productivity ratings, he has instituted a no bathroom breaks policy.
It's arguably even worse than Urinetown, because at least in Urinetown, you just have to pay to pee. This guy is just saying no more peeing, period. We're banning bathroom breaks.
You see these people working like on the line or whatever, taking inventory, and I like you see them working like in these horrible conditions, and you're like, wow, I respect these people more than politicians, policemen, and like servicemen, like in the military.
These people are braver than any U.S. Marine. No offense to anyone out there, but they're at this place not even allowed to pee. We get this one worker who really has to go, right? And his coworker is encouraging him not to just make a break for the bathroom because, their productivity will go down and they're going to fire the person with the lowest time or whatever. And so this employee eventually, he's approached by one of the automated robots that are all around this warehouse. He sees it And in an act of, direct action, he decides to pee into the robot.
He sees this robot who is, clearly more efficient than him, more successful than him, sexier even.
Basically getting cucked by this robot.
And so in an act of like direct action and radical violence to protest the fascist no bathroom policy of this warehouse, he whips it out and pees on the robot.
Is it workplace sexual harassment if it happens to a robot coworker?
I would say so, because the robot turns out not just to be any robot, but seemingly some sort of like, night stalking Dalek, because you see the guy doing inventory later, and this robot is just going, exterminate, whatever.
Pretty much. In spirit, yes. It starts crashing into shelves. It causes an avalanche, headed right for this guy. The coworker calls 911 and just says, "The robots, they're attacking."
Oh, we have fun.
We sure do.
So you see Hen and Chim driving to the scene of the crime, right? In the ambulance.
Hen is a little distracted at the wheel. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Chimney is trying to make all these jokes about automation and whatever, quipping about Skynet or whatever. And Hen doesn't want to hear about it. The only thing she wants to hear about is the click of the button that on ambulances that changes red lights to green lights and green lights to red lights. Apparently that's a thing. I had never heard about this from before this episode, and I haven't heard about it since. So right. I don't even know if this is a invention for the show. Do any first responders listen to the First Respodcast? If so, leave a comment.
Some might, for all we know.
But basically, in this ambulance, there's a button on the dashboard that when you press it, it sends out a radio signal to change a red light to a green light and a green light to a red light. In order to aid in the life-saving duties of the EMTs, right? Very important work that they do. And when you're watching, especially if it's a rewatch, you realize, oh, it's this episode.
Yep. Yeah, but right. Actually, it's sort of a bait and switch because nothing bad happens yet. And the 118 successfully arrives at the warehouse. The coworker is telling them what happened, says that, usually these robots are very precise, but this one malfunctioned for some reason.
I wonder what could have caused it.
Buck is kind of investigating the offending robot, notices a smell, and says, "Did you pee on this thing before it crashed?" Which this has got to be embarrassing for the guy that did that.
Again, like a dog scenting other people's piss.
He's like, This smells like somebody else's territory. I haven't peed on this yet.
They give up the game, right? That we'll rat out our boss because that's what happened and it's unethical what they're doing to us. And Bobby makes a very good point to Shane, the fascist manager of this Amazon warehouse, that what he's doing is against the law.
Yeah, he's like, OSHA's gonna have a field day with you.
It's actually, I believe it's a genuine felony to deprive workers of access to restrooms on long shifts, especially in accordance with OSHA.
So they start dragging this guy out from what's crushing him, and he starts bleeding profusely from multiple places on his body. And we kind of notice that Hen is much more alert and responsive on this call. She and Chimney are working like a well-oiled machine. I don't think we even mentioned this earlier, but there was a call early on where Chimney was asking her to hand him things, and she was not quite at the top of her game, not immediately grabbing. She was handing him the wrong things. So it seems now, he's got his partner back. And then, this guy eventually crashes, his pulse stops, and they start doing CPR and they get him back. And once they're outside, Chimney says to her, he's like, "We're back." She is back. They high five.
We've never been so back. Yeah.
Right. We've never been so back. Chimney gets in the back of the ambulance. Hen drives. They start heading to the hospital. All seems well when, at an intersection, Hen just crashes the ambulance right into a civilian vehicle. commercial break. And when we come back, we get a flashback of this girl that Hen hit. She is like a young prodigy cellist.
This girl, her name is Evelyn. She's a prodigy cellist. She's making her Philharmonic debut.
She's the youngest soloist in LA orchestra history. So it's like
incredible.
This comically good and like bright, had her whole life ahead of her person. It's like they've tried to think of like, who could we make this to make it like the most tragic death ever?
And for extra sentimentality, so because her grandma's going to miss it, she plays her piece for grandma. It is Bach. It is one of the cello suites. It's Violoncello number 1 in G major.
Like the famous cello piece.
The famous cello piece, the one that you hear all the time.
This and Canon in D are like the only 2 cello pieces anyone knows. Arguably, probably just some of the most famous classical music of all time. And so I thought that was kind of funny that, like, of course they would have her play this.
We see that she's also big on Instagram. She's getting a coffee, and her name on Instagram is Cello Kitty 03.
She's a little bit internet famous. She gets a lot of comments
on her posts.
What a productive member of society.
She's a bit of an influencer, you know what? And as she's driving, I believe is it to the performance that she's driving?
I think she's like picking up her dress from the cleaners, and she gets a call from her mom. Who's kind of fussing. She hangs up with mom, drives right into the intersection and into the oncoming ambulance, where we kind of catch up with Hen.
First of all, we get a music transition here. Well, first of all, we get an extremely well done, like very cinematic slow-mo shot of the car crash. That is another very high production value shot that you don't really see nowadays. So I want to appreciate it for a moment. And then like as the dust is starting to settle, Hen comes to, and we get a musical transition to another very famous piece. This is a modern piece, which is called On the Nature of Daylight by a gentleman named Max Richter. Now, both Bach and Richter are German composers, so I just really like this merging of composers from the Baroque period versus the contemporary period. And this song that is playing, you may recognize it because it's from his album that came out in 2006, but it's a very famous piece because of its use in media. It's been used in Arrival, in Shutter Island, and most notably for me. This is where I my ear pricked up because I had heard this so many times before, was because it was used in season 1, episode 3, the gay Nick Offerman episode of The Last of Us. When Bill and Frank are having their last day together and they get married. This is the piece that's playing. So it's just one of those little continuity things. It's like Sunshine from that movie, the very famous song from that's used in everything.
Right.
And you prick up your ears and they're like, oh, this beautiful score.
Now, Hen is understandably pretty horrified with what's transpired. Jesus. She's pretty horrified with what has transpired.
I know I'm waxing about how beautiful the score is in this scene. But this scene is haunting. It's one of the most tragic, heartbreaking scenes in the entire show.
Yeah, Hen gets out of the ambulance, tries to start tending to the woman. Chim gets out. He calls for backup. He calls Buck, Eddie, and Bobby. They get this radio. They're still at the warehouse, I think, and they're all kind of realizing, our ambulance crashed into somebody, and Hen was driving. Bobby quickly calls Athena. Hen, back at the scene, she sees that the woman's name is Evelyn. She starts trying to get to her. The rest of the 118 arrives. They start getting her out with the jaws, and Bobby has to tear Hen away from the scene because it's against procedure. He can't be having her tend to this scene that she technically caused. So they see that blood is everywhere, breathing is shallow on this woman. Hen has to just watch from the sidelines, which obviously is very difficult for her.
We get a series best performance from Aisha Hines in this scene.
Crazy.
This breakdown is insane. And then
very, very intense.
Athena shows up, and we also get another one of her series best performances where she's trying to console Hen, but in a
Right.
very she notices that as Hen is breaking down, she's letting information slip, and people around them are recording this. So she,
I'm sorry, but I find this kind of funny because it's so clear that it's like, from what we've been seeing recently of Athena, it's like, oh, Athena has a lot of experience with like getting investigated on the job
yeah,
for her unethical
yeah,
behavior. So she immediately, of
yeah,
course, is like, Hen, like, you got to shut up. You're in the earshot of onlookers. Like, they're going to do an investigation and you've got to make sure you like come out on top. It's
yep,
obviously in the episode she keeps emphasizing like, yeah, you're gonna tell the truth, but you're only gonna say what you know. It just feels so like, okay, after what we've just
yeah,
seen in like Rage and Athena Begins, you're like, how many
yeah.
investigations have you had to like cover up for, Athena?
Yeah, but it is a very raw, like sort of
Yes.
loving intensity from Athena that has a lot of like has a lot of layers to it. This is, I mean, Angela Bassett is just like one of the greatest actresses alive, and so like we're seeing this incredible like scene between the two of them of Hen breaking down and Athena trying in vain to control what's happening with her, and then you see the looks on the guys' faces as they're tending to Evelyn. It's clear she's a goner. She's not going to make it. You get this haunting wail from Hen, and the shot of the scattered sheet music on the asphalt. Oof. And the fade to black as the piece concludes, and then the credits just roll. The episode just ends like that, you know? This is what we say when the show used to have sauce,
Oof.
Yeah. Like,
I'm gonna be so honest.
This is insane.
I'm gonna be so honest. So I'm glad that this episode really worked for you. I do think it's not so much that I think this moment is obviously, yes, very intense, very emotionally executed. The performances are great. I do always kind of not love this entire storyline for Hen going forward, just because if I remember correctly, I think she's basically like cleared of any wrongdoing in the end. And it's like obviously emotionally difficult for her, but like as a story, I find it, it's kind of morally and like thematically uninteresting. I think this is kind of a recurring problem for Hen, where she'll have these emotional storylines where they try to have her like do something wrong, but then they kind of absolve her of any responsibility, which makes it like not very interesting to me. And I think it's mainly this storyline and then the thing she has in season 7 where she like also accidentally kills another guy, the congresswoman's son, which I was saying to you earlier, we talk about like Maddie racking up a body count. Honestly, Hen is getting there as well. She also has at least
she's going
2
body
people.
for body. Yeah.
Yes.
We've got a contender, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I guess this moment works on its own, but I do kind of wish that this had shaken out in a more interesting way.
Yeah, I don't have like such a firm recollection of how this shakes out other than like the conclusion of it. But I will say, as an excuse to give us like this powerhouse scene from one of the show's like best performers, I appreciate it for that, to the point where like the rest of the storyline could be so bad, and this individual like scene and like the way that it's done, it sticks with me so much that like
right,
it's worth it for whatever else goes down throughout the rest of the season. You know what I mean? That's my hot take on it, which is, I guess, punctuated by I love Aisha Hines so much.
It's true.
And I will say, I have for a very long time, and so I'm really glad that she's getting good material, because I remember I was first introduced to Aisha as an actress, and I think I briefly mentioned this in another episode, but I just rewatched this. It was an episode of Law and Order SVU. Where she had a very memorable turn as a school guidance counselor. And her performance in that episode was so, oh my God, it was so rich, that I had to like look this woman up and see what else she'd been in. And so when she was announced for this show, I mean, like, I said, like, Connie and Angela were, like, my biggest sells on the show right off the bat. But, like, I don't want to downplay that. Like, when I heard that Aisha Hines was going to be main cast on this, oh, my God, I was through the roof. And, like, that excitement has has like stayed with me for like her as a performer, which is why it sucks that she's being given such bad material in the newer seasons.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have a lot of other projects, because the show is very demanding, you know? At least one assumes, given that, you know, likewise, Oliver has done even less.
He's starting to do some more photo shoots.
Right.
Not necessarily roles in movies and TV, but yes. Yeah, I think she's always really good at these like intense emotional things. She's a great crier and a great laugher, you know? Like she's good at just like expressing herself emotionally in scenes. And yeah, so I do like this as a thing on its own. And I think this episode is pretty good overall, but obviously I had some grievances, like I said in the beginning. So I wouldn't call it one of my favorites. And I am still honestly kind of standing by my idea that maybe this is not the best season, or at least not a favorite of mine, you know?
That's fair. We can at least, you know, take comfort in knowing that it's, you know, above the current crop.
Yeah, for sure. Right? For sure. Anything would seem good to us right now after that.
Yeah, but I just appreciated this episode so much because of like, I know we're trying to wrap it up because we have something else to get to, but right. I think I also just appreciated this episode so much because, you know, after that string of really bad episodes, it felt like, you know, not just a return to form, but like, the show is actually doing something interesting again.
Sure.
Which I appreciated. And it got me back into it. I was having a moment after Athena Begins where I was like, do I even like this show anymore?
Yeah.
But this one reeled me back in, you know? So it's re-energized me for the rest of the series. And I know as time goes on, these re-energizing moments will get fewer and far between, but they do still exist.
Yeah.
We went through many highs and lows in our season 8 viewing.
We did. Not to dwell on that too much, you know, thank you for joining us on another installment of season 3 of 911. And hopefully this season will only get better. I can only hope.
And if it doesn't, we can just chalk it up to a writing room malfunction. So true. We could cut it off there, but also, if I want to include, we are about to record our next Patreon episode, which will probably be out before this episode, but it's about Gay Eddie. It's about the case for and against Gay Eddie. We're going to be defense and prosecution. So if you're interested in that, you should check us out on the old First Respodcast Patreon. We have multiple tiers, so subscribe to the one that best fulfills your heart's desire. And with that, good night and good luck, everyone.
Good night and good luck.
Good night and good luck. That's it.